So I want to do my August reading wrap up and talk about the 9 books that I read in August. I feel like we had a pretty good reading month. I'm excited but also a little bit apprehensive because I think next month is going to be a very big drop because I'll be starting school. Also, it's my last reading wrap up in this room. Next time I'll do it in my dorm. So let's talk about the 9 books that I read. I'm excited. I feel like I really went through such a range of emotions this month. With all the books, we had some really great ones and also some very average ones, I guess. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. So the first book that I read, I finished this pretty quickly. I finished this literally in I think 2 sittings because I was on the plane traveling in the beginning of the month and I brought this with me to read. And this is Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. This is the movie version with Robert Pattinson on it. I didn't really mind this cover. It's kind of interesting. I wanted to buy it and I was at Target and they only had this cover, but everyone I think knows this now because the movie has come out, got a lot more popular. I also watched the movie, which I liked, but for me I prefer the book. But if you don't know, this is a sci-fi / fiction book. It takes place after humanity has started to send people in these colonies in a really big rocket ship to go find a new place to colonize because the earth is now uninhabitable for people, and everyone kind of wants to get on these ships, but obviously there is a certain amount of people that can go on, and the only way that this guy Mickey, the main character, can get on is if he has a job that the ship needs. And it's you need to be a pilot, a bodyguard, an engineer, biologist, and he doesn't really have any of those skill sets. But there's this one job that truly no one wants to take, but each ship needs one person to fulfill this role. And it's not necessarily skill-based, so he takes it upon himself to apply. In fact, he's the only one that applies. And he becomes an expendable, which is basically the person that they use to test out all the new environments, to go out and see if the air is okay, if he's gonna get a sickness or an airborne virus. They send him out, and if he gets it, then he'll just die, and they will have his whole body or his brain up into the web so that they can just make a new him. But every time he dies, he doesn't remember how he dies, but he remembers that he's dead. This is the new version. So the title is Mickey 7. The movie's called Mickey 17. So he's died 6 times at this point in the book. So each time he still remembers his previous self, but he is also different from his previous body. It follows that and how kind of his trajectory and just the talk about the ethics of doing this, and if he's viewed as subhuman, and just the toll that it takes on him mentally, and also just his relationship with the other people in the colony. I want to say that this to me kind of is a fiction book in a sci-fi environment, because if you're looking at this from a plot point of view, I feel I can't explain it very coherently. I can't tell you this is what happens, this is the end, because it kind of went in a more fiction trajectory where we honestly just followed this guy's life. Besides us kind of navigating his life, a problem arises where when he is presumed dead, they already make a clone of his body, but they didn't realize that he actually survived. So now there are 2 Mickeys, and he's kind of navigating that because the colony can only have one, and for some reason they're very, very against having 2 clones because of something that happened in their past. So then he's kind of dealing with that. I know that I didn't explain it in a very coherent way, as I usually don't, but I just think that this book is so nicely written because I was sitting on the plane and I was truly just so engrossed in the story. I feel the way that it's written and Mickey as a character, I really liked him as a character. I feel he was just so relatable. I like that there were little philosophical ramblings that were put into this that kind of let you know about the motivations of the people in the world and kind of how people's mindsets change when humanity no longer has a home and when they're in a very big stage of extreme growth and kind of an uncertain future. I think if you are reading this because you want to see a fast-paced plot, I think that you should watch the movie. But if you are okay with it being a little more slow and fiction based and kind of more character study in regards to Mickey, I recommend reading the book. I prefer the book. I think that it is very digestible. I read it really fast and it's just so pleasant. Like, I just feel really happy that I read this book. I've been meaning to read the book and watch the movie for a really long time, and I'm glad that I got to it. The relationship between him and Nasha is truly the most like pleasant, healthy relationship, and I'm so just like in awe of it, and it makes me so happy. So yeah, this is Mickey 17. I highly recommend. I think it's also a good segue if you read a lot of fiction and you want to get into sci-fi but not super like obscure or kind of very intense sci-fi. This kind of feels like a good in between for the two genres, and I also gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next book I read on my trip as well, and I finished it pretty fast. This is Legend of the White Snake by Sher. This is, I think, a fantasy romance book. So this is a retelling of a Chinese legend. It's one of China's 4 famous legends, and the legend is about this romance between a man and a woman, and the woman is a female snake spirit. And this is like a gay retelling of that, but it follows this prince who is currently searching for the cure to his mother's illness after she was bitten by a snake, and she has been very weak for a long time, and he thinks that the only thing that will cure her is this magical pearl. So he goes on this big journey to go and find it. And on his path doing so, he finds this boy and he falls in love with him, but he is secretly a snake spirit turned into a boy. And once that gets found out, the romance just unfolds from there, the plot unfolds from there, and it kind of just is this big adventure. And I think that it was very sweet. Honestly, I feel like I don't remember very clearly what it was about other than that, but I liked it. I think it was cute. I think that the fantasy plot is not that groundbreaking. It was fine. If you are already interested in this book, I think, yeah, go ahead and read it. But I think if you want a fantasy book and you see this, like, I wouldn't be like, run and go read it. But if you're already planning on reading it, yeah, go ahead. It's fine. For me, the romance was kind of immediate, and I also felt really bad for the snake spirit. I feel like he goes through so much of the book and he sacrifices so much, but yeah, I don't know, it was a fine book. I don't have much to say, but yeah, that was The Legend of the White Snake by Sher. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. So this is Rachel Gillig's new fantasy duology, I think. I don't know. I read One Dark Window by her before, and I really liked it, but I didn't become obsessed with it to the point where I read the second book. I still haven't read the second book, and I mean to, but it's not very high on my priority list. But this came out pretty recently, and it is taken in this like medieval-esque world where the main character is this girl named Six, and not named Six, but she's called Six, and she's kind of like a divine seer for the church in this medieval world where she and 5 other girls are living at the church so that they can see and kind of like predict other people's fates. So then when the new boy king comes over to get his fate read, which is like something customary that he has to do so that the people will believe that he has a good blessing in a sense, when she goes and reads for him, then she finds that he has very bad fate. Shortly after she reads his fate, and the way they do it is very interesting, where like she has to drown in the holy water or something to that sense, like the spring water, and then she will be led through all the different objects. They have certain objects in the world that are very interesting and reverend, and then they either give like the king their blessing or not. And then after she does that, all of a sudden each one of her fellow diviners start to go missing until she is the only one left. And then the hunting, like the king, when he went to the church originally, he came with his whole crew, and there was this one night where she and him had like kind of a enemies to lovers moment, and something happens where she ends up being a part of the king's troop, where she is on the goal to find what happened to each of her fellow diviners. The king is on his goal to rewrite the way that the current like world is governed, because he feels that it's very corrupt and that it's just very like central to only certain people who have a lot of power, and he kind of wants to destabilize that and be like the new ruler. And she agrees to help him as long as he also agrees to use his resources to help her find all of her diviners that have gone missing. So from there it kind of just goes on an adventure. They're questing, they're going on different journeys. I really okay, my number one thing that I like this book, and it's kind of rare because usually I don't like this part, but the romance is actually really good in this book. It's between, I think it's already in the blurb, I hope, but it's between her and the king's like first knight, this guy named Rory, and truly this like, oh my god, it was so good. The like dialogue, the chemistry between the characters. I feel like the girl 6, or the woman, I don't know how old she is, she's very strong headed, and she kind of has her goals and she sticks to them. And then Rory is like, it's not even that he's trying to make her stray away from his goals, but he's so in support of her. Like everything that she wants to do, like when she wants to stray away from the king and do her own thing, he's like gonna support her. He's literally her number one cheerleader, and that was so nice to read. Like I love the dynamics between the two characters. It was truly like, I still remember some of the dialogue between them, and I was like, oh my god, when I was reading them I truly just highlighted every single time they talked to each other, because I was like, this is so good. Like I like the plot, but I think in the beginning we kind of immediately get all the diviners are disappearing, and then she kind of goes on her quest, and the mystery itself in terms of the diviners takes a bit of a back seat, where we kind of focus more on the goal of the king, and then at the very end of the book like everything comes together. But for me, I was more interested in why the diviners were disappearing, and I wish that we had more kind of exploration or investigation of that before in the end, where everything kind of culminates to a point and comes in at once, because I was like what's going on? But I like this, and I actually think that I prefer it to One Dark Window, which I also gave 4 stars. I gave this one 4 stars as well. But I'm just like, the characters I think are so interesting, and I like that how a lot of them have more depth, because I think in One Dark Window it was mainly her monster, and then like that guy or her main love interest that were kind of fleshed out. But in this one they're like, she's fleshed out obviously, and then Rory is, and then also the king. And then I really liked like the mother character that is with them in the troop, and then also she has this gargoyle that follows her around named Bartholomew, and I think it's just like so fun, and I really liked his character. And there's just a lot to look forward to in this book, and I think there are a lot of different aspects that will appeal to different people, and that's just what made the book really appealing to me. So yeah, I would recommend. I really liked it. I don't read very many like knight fantasy books or set in kind of like medieval times, so this was a change of setting in YA fantasy, where things are kind of not getting formulaic, but I see like the trends, and this feels a little different from them. So yeah, I would really recommend this book. It was such a ride. It was truly such a ride. Once you get over where it gets a little slow in the middle, I think it really picks itself back up, and I think that's where all the magic really happens. The next book I read was Strange Pictures by Uketsu. This was the author that did Strange Houses, and I was on TikTok when I first saw it, and then people were saying actually how Strange Pictures was better than Strange Houses. Strange Houses was supposed to be like a mystery book about like a house plan that didn't make sense, but this one is about images that have like a secret base to them, and then kind of a murder mystery alongside it. And I think that this book was so scary, truly. I have never been scared like this before because of the pictures, not necessarily because of like the writing itself. So that's what I would say really drew me into the book. It's not even that long, but it's split up in like 4 kind of stories or like different mysteries that you follow, and the images in the first story actually scared me so bad. And after that, I kind of just not went downhill from there, but none of them shocked me to the same extent of the first story. So I was kind of like about the rest of the book, but I think it's worth reading the first story at least if you want something that will shock you. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just like there are these crimes or mysteries that occur, and then there's an image associated with it, and then as the story goes on you kind of get more clues about it, and you learn the backstory of like the image itself, and you kind of like, they did this thing where they like superimposed it differently and they just swapped it around, and like it revealed something, and I was like, whoa. I liked it, but it's not very memorable to me. I think in the moment it was very shocking, but yeah, if you want something for Halloween, I'd recommend. I don't know if I'm gonna read Strange Houses, but yeah, I think that this was pretty good. It does get kind of confusing if you have read it near the end. I feel like so many things were like happening at once and so many names. I was like, oh my goodness, but yeah, I would recommend. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It's pretty short and it definitely shocked me. The next book that I read is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. This book is truly, I don't know why I waited so long to read it, but this book is on another level for me. Like, I think about the lines and I think about the writing so much. If you don't know, I'm sure you do, but because it's very popular. But it's about this guy named David, and he goes to Paris to kind of find himself and get a new start in his life. And while he's there, he meets this guy named Giovanni, and they have this estranged, intense, like, infatuation with each other for 3 months. However, he already had a fiance named Hella while he was there and when he meets Giovanni. So their relationship is doomed to end, and like David knows that he's gonna go marry Hella at the end of it. So it's a very tragic story. It's very sad. There's just like, at its bare bones, that's what it's about. And I truly don't want to speak too much about it because in another video I like actually do a deep dive and talk very much about my feelings on it. But this just stuck with me so much. Like, the talks of being queer and also just like self-acceptance and internalized homophobia and just finding yourself and just like self-loathing, there's so much, and the way that James Baldwin writes is so lyrical and beautiful. I truly was just in awe because it's so short, but it impacted me so much. And I literally, like, I felt so angry at David, but I also understood him. I felt for him, and I also just felt so sorry for Giovanni, but I also was like, Giovanni has to like understand David. They're just like, these characters feel so real to me, truly. And even Hella, I think that people need to speak more about Hella because her character to me also just represents like expectations on women and gender roles, and there's just so much packed into this little book that I just can't recommend it enough. It's like literally less than 200 pages. Yeah, it's like 150-ish pages. Really just read this book if you've been meaning to. I really can't recommend it enough. There were so many lines I highlighted because I was like, oh my goodness, like how can someone write in this way? But yeah, that is Giovanni's Room. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It's my first James Baldwin, and I really hope that it won't be my last. The next book that I read is When Ghosts Call Us Home by Katya de Becerra. These like 3 books are already in my fall videos, so I'm gonna try and keep it quick, but this is a thriller, mystery, horror, YA book about this girl named Sophia, and when she was young, she and her sister had her star in this horror film at a house that her parents were doing the architect work for. So they stayed in this really big manor called Cashore House, I think. And the horror film that her sister films when Sophia was 12 ends up being a absolute cult classic. And years later, when her sister is in college, she mysteriously disappears, and the only thing that Sophia knows is that she somehow saw like a photo on the wiki fandom of her sister entering Casher house, which she hasn't had a connection to in a very long time. Then she wants to go back to investigate, obviously, and find her sister. However, the house has been closed off because they're still trying to find the disappearance of her sister. But the only way that she can get access to it is through doing this rerun documentary of the movie that has her reenact the scenes. So while she's at the house, she's also investigating the disappearance of her sister and kind of being forced to reckon with the ghosts of her past because she's reenacting all the scenes that she did when she was once 12, and she's like 17 now. And there's also a little bit of a romance. So for me, this book had such an interesting premise that really hooked me, but truly the execution and kind of explanation of the lore of the house to me felt very haphazard. Execution was not good. I don't know how else to explain. I was kind of disappointed by it, and I feel like in terms of the investigating and just the logic, it doesn't really add up completely when you think about it in extreme detail. Like me, I like to logic it out at the very end when everything gets revealed, and for me it didn't make much sense. But I don't know. And also I wasn't very into the romance. I feel like we really didn't need to have that. I think if you have been meaning to read this book, yes, sure, give it a try. But if you haven't heard of this book, I think that read the premise and see if it interests you, then go ahead, because the premise is so strong and honestly so unique, but the execution is not completely up to the same level. And then because of that, I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. But yeah, there were some parts I was okay with, but in general, I just don't know if it was worth reading. This is a book that I feel like I talked about this enough, but I think I can confidently say for me, this is not worth reading. But this is Boys with Sharp Teeth by Jenni Howell. This is a dark academia YA book. It's about this girl named Marin, and her cousin Sam has died, and she thinks that foul play was involved because Sam, who is the bodyguard at this prestigious academy, Huntsworth Hall, was last seen with these 3 very wealthy kids, Adrian, Sam, and Boz, who go to Huntsworth Academy, and she thinks that they had something to do with his death. So then she goes undercover as a very rich girl, Jamie Vane, to go and infiltrate the school and get close to the 3 friends so that she can have them confess to the crime that she thinks of one of them killing him. At its bare bones, that's what the story is about. There's a little bit of a magical element to it that has something to do with mirrors. For me, I already said this before, but I think this is an example of a book that wants to so comfortably say itself into the dark academia genre that does everything that has dark academia things at the surface, like a prestigious boarding school, strange obsession, very bizarre, kind of tense relationships between characters. And on its surface, this fits dark academia to a T, but I think that it lacks the depth that the genre has in terms of social commentary, because for me this doesn't have the substance I feel like dark academia kind of seeks to explore. I don't really know how else to explain other than the things that were happening were oh, the people are obsessed with each other, they just are. It was there was no other commentary other than just to fit that quota of bizarre, unhealthy friendship, but obsession, check. And there was just no deeper meaning to those other than just to have them. And for me, I was like, why are they like this? Because it felt very bizarre to have them act in this way, except for the fact that they just were obsessed with each other. And I was just like, okay, I'm supposed to believe it now. I just don't know how else to explain my gripe with this book other than that I just didn't feel like it did anything new except to be dark academia, which I think that's not enough to be worth reading. For me, because it took me 7 hours to read this book because of how kind of incomprehensible, and also the main character really annoyed me at times, but I just didn't feel like it was a good use of my 7 hours. I would have rather read another book, and I think there's so many dark academia books now that I can choose a better one to read. And also the romance between the characters, I no, I don't agree. And also the ending, if you have read this book, what was that? Yeah, this is Voices to Our Teeth. I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. Next book is House of the Beast by Michelle Wong. This is by the author that illustrated The Legend of Korra, and I think this is her debut. It is a YA. I don't know if it's YA honestly, but it's a fantasy book about this girl named Alma, and in the world there are these like 4 mythical gods slash beasts that everyone worships, and they give powers to the people who are the most devoted, and those are the pilgrims. And when Alma's mother goes ill, she gets contacted by their estranged father, who she had never met before, and he gives her a deal where he will save her mother if she comes with him back to the House of the Beast, which is one of the 4 gods, and train under him so that she can become one of his like right hand men or soldiers when he goes to the pilgrim, because his goal is to be the first hand, which is like the most powerful person in the house. He's currently second hand, and he has to go through these trials to kill like a fallen star or slay a fallen star, and he wants her support and also like her use as a soldier. So she agrees despite her mother's protests and goes to the house, and the first thing that happens to her is that her dad forcibly like cuts off her hand, like her forearm down to her hand, to sacrifice it to the beast. And because of that, she can now get the beast like blessing and the power that comes with it. So like when she gets her false prosthetic arm, it has like the power of the beast, or something happens and she's now a more formidable soldier. And she soon learns while training at the house that her dad has let her mother die, and that he never actually intended to give her the physicians that she needed. Because of this, Alma swears revenge, and she vows that she will take the one thing that her dad wanted the most, which was to become first hand. So she is going to intend to enter the trials under her own name and become first hand herself, instead of supporting her father. There's also one other person vying to be first hand. He is the most legitimate of them all because he is the son of the current first hand, Alma's uncle, and it's her cousin named Kame. So you have these 3 opposing forces all converging into one thing when they all go on the pilgrimage to go slay the fallen star. And I think this book, it just restored my kind of faith in the fantasy genre. I think this is what I had been wanting to read for a long time. It has a very strong female character. The romance in it, there is romance, but it's not very integral to the story. I think the companionship that she has with the beast is very important, but the romance itself kind of takes a backseat, and I was really happy for that because I feel like she has her goal of avenging her mother and she's going to go and do it. And there's so many people with very interesting motivations, and I think once you get to know all the characters, you'll find that there's like a lot going on to keep you entertained. There's kind of like political intrigue and also the morals, because like on her path to, you know, avenge her mother, she kind of thinks like, am I still the person that my mother would have been proud of? Because while doing that, she's like killing a lot of people, and there's a lot of violence. This book is it's very violent and it's a little gory, but it's not too graphic. But I think on the path that she's taking to avenge her mother and like all the violence that ensues, she's still thinking like, am I becoming the person that my mother would have wanted? Because it's one thing to kind of sate her own need of revenge, but it's another to be a person that her mother would have been proud of. Like, I don't know, she's grappling with these things, and truly the book is so interesting. There are also illustrations in it, which I think adds so much, because you get to see what the characters look like, and you just, yeah, I remember reading this book. I read it kind of fast in like 3 days, and I was just like, this is what I want to read when I say I want to read fantasy. Like, it gave me the same feeling as reading Six of Crows, and I think Six of Crows is such like an OG to the genre, and I was just so happy that I kind of got back into it with this book. So I really recommend it. It's so good. The magic system is very unique, and I think this is gonna stick with me for a long time. So I give it 4 out of 5 stars, and that is House of the Beast by Michelle Wong. The final book that I read, I finished yesterday actually, and this is Flesh by Virginia Woolf. I bought this, I think, a few months ago. I wanted to read it because I forget why I wanted to read it, but I had a sudden urge to read it, and it is about this dog, Flesh, this Cocker Spaniel, and he is Elizabeth Barrett's dog, the poetess, and it's a biography kind of about his life and all of his adventures throughout his life as he goes from a puppy to an old dog. It is so charming and pleasant. Really, this book just made me love my dog even more. He really goes through so many interesting adventures. Like, he gets kidnapped, he goes to Italy, he has a first love. Like, this dog lived life, and I think it's so nice to just follow his trajectory, what happens to him. It's not that long of a book. It's around 200 pages, and I really recommend reading this if you kind of feel like you're in a slump, because after reading all those fantasy books, I was like, okay, I kind of want a palate cleanser, and this really did give it to me. I liked that it was still digestible, because this is my first Virginia Woolf, but there was still commentary and discussion about some deeper topics like class in England and also in gender roles and empowerment of women, because she kind of Flesh's owner, she gets very empowered when it's time to find him. She's like, okay, no one is doing anything, like, I need to take matters into my own hands. And I really like that part of the book. I recommend reading this in cold weather, and also just if you have a dog or if you have a pet, but especially if you have a dog, I recommend this book because it made me want to give my dog a hug, because poor Flesh and what he went through. But yeah, I read 9 books, 3 physicals, which I'm happy about because I've had these on my TBR for a while. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what September will give us. I really don't know how many books I'm going to be able to get through because school will be starting, but we'll see. I'll keep you all posted. Currently, I am reading this I don't want to call it a disaster, but I feel intense anticipation because I think I'm gonna read the brothers Karamazov. I think I'm gonna try and read it before school starts, and frankly, this doesn't look that wide, but this book is like 900 pages long. I might do a video just for this book. I read like the first chapter. I'm really excited, but yeah, those are all the reading updates. I hope that August was good for reading, and I'll keep you guys posted with the brothers Karamazov or anything else I end up reading.